So, we are here in the continuous series of webinars today. I think all those members who are very eagerly waiting for listening to AOMPT and my points on various topics related to physical examination. Okay, all these members are getting a Sunday celebration now. Okay, it's really a great thing that the technical whatever the internet connectivity and all these reasons which were keeping the webinars away from the participants for quite a while in between has become best buddy thanks to the what is called as destiny, okay, which wants all of us to be connected together. So it's always a great pleasure to take sessions where I can share my knowledge live, direct, okay, in any means. So I'll one thing I'll tell you, whether you are learning or not, taking these sessions I am learning from myself, okay, and I always don't compromise that I should be the best learner, okay. So that's always important. I watch my videos later also, and I learn how to make others learn. I learn as a student watching my own video, as a teacher who is taking, okay. So it's always an enjoyable experience when it comes to knowledge, okay. Coming to the webinar number 27, we are going to see now the joint play testing. This is as part of the 100 webinars, the Century Webinarathon provided by the AOMPT, exclusively free interactive webinars, clinical topics and also research topics in physical therapy, especially related to the orthopedic or the manual therapy. So we are going to see the joint play testing. Historically, however, the word joint play, accessory mobility, joint dysfunction, all these were coined by John Mennel, okay, and then of course his son James Mennel evolved it to joint hypermobility, hypomobility, all this, parallelly with the profound works of Stanley V. Paris, okay, from USA, who first gave what is called as a very, very significant contribution to joint play and mobility testing by evolving a joint play grading scale, okay. The scale actually includes 0 to 6, and 0 is ankylosed. Literally there is no mobility that is possible. Imagine you are giving a glide through a wooden piece, nothing will happen, okay. So same like that, ankylosed, it's fused. 0, okay. 3 is normal mobility. Normal mobility, which I would try to explain as 2/3 of a movement, okay, and after that you start feeling the resistance, okay, the tissue stop, and 1/3 will be the resistance range, okay, 2/3 will be the free range, okay. This could be possible with any kind of substance which you are giving a pressure. For example, if its height is this much, you are pressing it, 2/3 it's going, after that it is hard, so that's the normal mobility, okay. So when you give a glide also, and you always have a normal reference comparing to opposite sides, or normal reference comparing to age or gender matched or physiological status matched reference values, okay. 3 is normal mobility. 6 is unstable, that means it's actually dislocated, so that's out of contact. When you palpate the joint itself, you know that they are out of contact. If you are giving the force, you feel that there is no resistance at all, okay. So you will rather you will not give the force, okay, because you know it is dislocated. Why to dislocate it further, okay. So that's grade 6. What comes in between grade 1, 2 and 4 and 5? Remember that grade 1 is considerable hypomobility, and grade 2 is mild hypomobility, and grade 4 mild hypermobility, and grade 5 considerable hypermobility. So how do you say mild and considerable? It is the 1/3, 2/3, okay. You find the resistance in the initial 1/3 itself, you can tell it is considerable hypomobility. If you are finding resistance in the middle 1/3 of the range of motion, you can tell mild hypomobility, okay. If you are finding in the last 1/3 is normal, okay. So the range of excursion of the articular surface, okay, joint play. Also, when you are seeing the resistance in the last one third is normal. If you don't find the resistance in the last one third, and then you are finding an extra movement that is possible, you can say it's a mild hypermobility. And if you find there is a profoundly increased movement and the absence of resistance beyond the one third more, so that means one third is the normal range, another one third is added, and then you don't find the resistance, that means it becomes a considerable hypermobility, and when it goes totally out of contact, it's going to be unstable. Okay, so these reference values were very, very useful for clinicians over many decades. People were using this joint play grading scale by Stanley Paris. Of course, until the Norwegian physician and physiotherapist, our Freddy Kaltenborn and Olaf Evgenth, okay, both of them evolved the what is called as the Kaltenborn's concept, where they took the concave convex rule which was mentioned or described by John Mennel, and they have applied it to the clinical scenario or the indications by which we can give the mobilization, the joint mobilization, the term. So these experts, Freddy Kaltenborn, he explained the concave convex rule. Remember that every joint articular surface were distinguishable into ovoid and cellular surfaces. Ovoid means it's similar to the convex, and cellular is the concave surfaces. Even in the plane synovial joints, you can always think of the moving bone as the concave bone. Okay, so either of these bones could be moving. Okay, when, for example, when we move the glenohumeral joint, it could be seen as movement of the humerus or movement of the scapula. Okay, and you can treat the glenohumeral joint stiffness with mobilizing the humerus or mobilizing the scapula. And you know that scapula is a concave bone, whereas glenohumeral, the humerus, is the convex bone, the head of the humerus. Okay, because glenoid cavity is concave in scapula, head of the humerus is convex in humerus. So the law, basically the concave convex rule, has three statements. The first statement, of course, is the direction of roll always happens in the direction of the movement of the bony lever. So if the bone moves anteriorly, rolling also happens anteriorly. If the bone moves superiorly, rolling also happens superiorly. Okay, in example like humeral abduction, for example. Okay, so rolling is in the direction of the movement of the bony lever. Okay, the next one, of course, when the concave bone is moving on the convex bone, the direction of the glide is same as that of the roll. So if, for example, tibia is flexing, it's going posteriorly in the knee, so posterior rolling is happening, so the glide, the direction of glide of the tibia during knee flexion is posterior glide. Okay, because it's a concave bone, tibia is. Okay, but if the same knee flexion is happening with the femur moving, that is, you are seeing in terms of closed kinematic chain, where you are squatting, for example, femur is moving, femur is convex bone. So here, instead of the tibia gliding posteriorly, it's the femur movement, posterior roll, femur is moving posteriorly during the squatting, and same anterior glide of the femur will happen. Okay, so the roll and the glide will be in opposite direction. That is the third sentence, which is when the convex bone is moving on the concave bone, the direction of the glide is opposite to that of the direction of the roll. Okay, so these are mainly skeletal. It's more to do with the architecture, bony architecture of the joints. So of course it does not involve the muscle activity. So, but it still gave a huge direction for people, which direction they can give the mobilization forces for which movements when they are found to be restricted on examination. Okay, so if you have a flexion restriction in the shoulder, you can give a posterior glide because flexion is an anterior movement. Why are you giving posterior glide? Because humerus is convex bone. Okay, same if you have flexion restriction of elbow, you might think of anterior glide, okay, of the radius, okay, or inferior glide of the ulna. Okay, so you are taking a direction of the movement itself, you will give the direction of the glide because head of the radius is also concave, ulna olecranon process is also, the trochlear notch is also concave. Okay, so it was giving a best direction for therapists to decide. And over a period of time, Kaltenborn also evolved his own concept of grades of mobilization, where he mentioned 3 grades. grade 1, grade 2 and grade 3. And remember that these grades are very subjectively described as per his clinical expertise and experience. And he said that loosening the joint. Okay, so loosening means we think of use this term predominantly as a warm up. Okay, get your joints loosened up. Okay, so at resting position the joints will be like this. Loosening means you are taking it like this and you are preparing it. So that's loosening of the joint. That is grade 1. Even these mobilizations are given, the grades are for the traction that is applied, okay, not for the glide. Okay, so that's the grade 1. And then you actually have the tightening, okay, where you give a traction so that the ligaments and the capsule become lengthened, okay, to some extent. Okay, and of course the 3 is stretching that. Okay, so you can stretch it by maximum distraction or by minimal distraction with a glide. Okay, both are equivalent to the grade 3. So what essentially happens in Kaltenborn's mobilization is you end up giving a distraction which is either like grade 1 and then grade 2 and then grade 3, which is with the traction. Okay, so you are giving. So remember that grade 1 is useful for patients with pain, whereas grade 3 is useful for patients with adhesions and contractures and stiff joints. Okay, of course hypermobility was a contraindication to mobilization, and Paris himself told that hypermobility indicates a stabilization, whereas hypomobility indicates the mobilization. Okay, following the principles of Kaltenborn and also the anatomical orientation of the facet joints with the clinical experience, and combining this mobilization, the passive gliding forces with active movements or functional movements, Brian Mulligan evolved the mobilization with movements. So joint play techniques assessment, the mobilizations, it is given in synchronizing with the functional position, and then you are giving, which is called as the NAGs, okay, natural apophyseal glides, or you are giving with the movement in terms of sustained natural apophyseal glides, and then of course you give mobilization with movements for the extremity joints. But the most important significant work was done by a physical therapist from Australia, who is a pioneer in the evolution of Australian approach of manual therapy, integrating the principles of clinical reasoning of Mark Jones, is Jeffrey D. Maitland, who actually evolved this passive movements as an assessment and a treatment approach, and he described the joint mobilization in depth, beyond any comparison with any experts. Okay, he's really he I will always repeat this whenever I take the Maitland concept, is he created a paradigm shift in manual therapy, like before and after Maitland. Okay, such a huge difference he made it. People who want to develop expertise in manual therapy should definitely get access to the 50 videos of the Maitland concept from AOMPT, and also practical webinar of a Maitland concept which was conducted 5 days. Definitely will give you a better highlight on the mobilization techniques. Okay, when you see for mobilization which is in the Maitland concept, remember that the grades of mobilization of Maitland are 5 grades. Grade 1 is the small amplitude, okay, rhythmic oscillatory motion performed in the beginning of the range. Grade 2 is a large amplitude rhythmic oscillatory motion performed in the beginning of the range. Grade 3, large amplitude rhythmic oscillatory motion performed towards the end of the range, end of the available range, for example. And grade 4 is small amplitude rhythmic oscillatory motion performed towards the end of the range, grade 4. And grade 5, quick unidirectional, okay, and high velocity low amplitude thrust technique performed in the end of the range. That is grade 5 mobilization, which is called as manipulation or thrust techniques. Okay, so these mobilizations were indicated, the grades 1 and 2 were indicated for people with pain, and grade 3 and 4 were indicated for patients with resistance during the passive movement examination. And of course, how grade 1 and 2 can relieve the pain is by the neurophysiological mechanism of mechanoreceptor stimulation, large diameter fibers stimulation, so the gate control mechanisms, and also the touch, the placebo, which can create a descending inhibition, so that also can relieve the symptoms. Grade 3 and 4, It's mechanical relief of symptoms, so the adhesions could be broken, tissues can be lengthened, so more mobility can be increased. So it's local physical effect than the physiological effect. Okay, grade 3 and 4. Grade 5, it's again a neurophysiological one, involving the autonomic nervous system. So it's very it's also can be because of placebo, because of the cracking sound that is obtained during the thrust manipulation techniques. Okay, so of course manipulation is indicated after the mobilization has been used and there is a plateau and you can use it. Of course, ruling out the contraindications for mobilization is also there for treatment. There can be absolute or relative contraindications, red flags or yellow flags. For manipulation there are more red flags, including age and various picture, but here we are discussing about assessment, not basically, okay, and to derive the plan of a treatment. Okay, so that's where we are seeing this webinar, joint play testing. When you are evaluating a glide, okay, what is important here is the position of the joint. Okay, so position of the subject, of course, because you are giving a glide in sitting, giving a glide in supine lying, it's totally different. Okay, and it depends upon the symptom position and the irritability of the symptoms in the particular posture. Okay, and then next one is of course the position of the joint, because you can give the glide in the neutral resting position of the joint, which is actually free of resistance. The joint space is more the loose packed position, okay, where you can give the glides, or you can give in the end range positions, close packed position, and then you can give the glides as a progression. Okay, use of assessments in Maitland also included the use of compression and distraction techniques. So compression was told to test the intra-articular structures, whereas distraction was told to test the periarticular or the capsule ligamentous structures. Okay, so both of them can also be used as treatments. For example, a patient with a hypermobility, you can give the compression. A patient with hypomobility, you can give the distraction. Okay, and adhesive capsulitis, distraction will be more important. In osteoarthritis, you will give the compression in long term. Okay, in a progression of treatment. Okay, so positioning of the joint can be individually, it can be in the end range and then you can give the glide, or you can give a combined position and then you can give the glide. Okay, you can give a flexion, horizontal adduction and internal rotation and then give the posterior glides. So it depends upon which specific portion of capsule which you want to stretch. Here in this example, it is the posterior inferior capsule together with the posterior band of the inferior glenohumeral ligament. Okay, so anatomically it should relate to that. Okay, with the position. Facet joint, if you are giving the glides, the joint play techniques, remember the rule of threes. Okay, in the thoracic spine, the direction of glide which you have to apply. In cervical spine, upper cervical horizontal towards the teeth. Okay, in facet joints, whereas middle and lower cervical you will give towards the eye. Okay, so different directions are possible. The treatment plane, which is explained in Mulligan's concept also. So joint play techniques, assessments. First you assess in the neutral position, next you assess in the end range positions. If you are suspecting a particular movement should be restricted, remember that movement, you will keep it in that movement to increase the movement if it is non-irritable, or you are keeping it in the opposite direction of movement if it is irritable. Okay, for example, if a patient is having a flexion problem and flexion is more painful, flexion is irritable, don't keep the neck in flexion, don't check the central post-anterior pressure, okay, because it will produce flexion. A C5, okay, you might do C6 because C5 will extend. So that's the mechanics, reverse mechanics. So you can use that pressure or position the neck in extension and then check if the symptom is irritable. If the symptom is non-irritable, you keep it in flexion and you give the central post-anterior pressure on the spinous process on C5 itself, because it's non-irritable. You can provoke the symptoms. Okay, because when you leave it, it will relieve. Okay, so this principles has to be followed in any part of the subjective or objective examination, because you should see for towards the provocation of symptom as a direction of treatment in patients with non-irritable symptoms, whereas away from the provocation of symptoms or towards the relief of symptoms, you will combine the position, you will give the glide also, less grades, grade 1 and 2, and then you will combine with distraction and then give the glides if it's osteoarthritis knee, You will combine with compression and then give the glides if it is hypermobility, ligament injuries. Okay, so you should always see that and then decide upon depending upon the irritability spectrum. Okay, the non-irritable or the high irritability. Of course, for the joint play, the best one method which you can utilize together is the rigid tape. Okay, that is what Mulligan also advised as Mulligan taping. So after correcting the patella and assessing that during the squatting a medial glide of patella is relieving the symptom, put a medial direction tape, okay, and then ask the patient to squat and be functionally independent. Okay, so rigid taping can be a useful adjunct. I would always advise exercises because without an active intervention there is no long-term carryover effect of any kind of a mobilization. So that's why orthomyo-neuro-manual therapy. So you give an articular glide, and once you are giving the glide, involve the muscles contraction here and eccentric here, concentric. If I am giving a glide, for example, inferior glide of the humerus, that means the adductors and the lower part of the muscles, I need a concentric contraction together, and abductors, rotator cuff, eccentric control. Okay, because for inferior glide. So these things are important, or humeral centering, because motor control of the glenohumeral joint, it's the humeral head to be centered or compressed by the rotator cuff contraction, which you can perform in 60-degree scapular plane, scaption. Okay, so don't just do the joint play testing. With the joint play, involve myofascial mobilization. You give the superior glide of the upper trapezius fascia, then check the inferior glide of the humerus, okay, or inferior glide of the upper trapezius fascia, and then you check the inferior glide of the humerus. Check the interrelationship between fascia and the articular, okay, or even neural. You are keeping in a neurodynamic position and then you are checking the inferior glide. Okay, so this is actually explained in orthomyo-neuro-manual therapy, AM and MT approach, and also the differentiation based manual therapy approach. Both of them practical demonstration webinars. Differentiation based approach is 10 practical webinars, and AM and MT is 20 practical webinars. So it will be a very, very unique approach which I would advise every one of you who are listening to this joint play testing to get these videos and learn from them, get certified from the AOMPT, take your joint play testing to a higher level, and so that functionally you can relate. Even there is no restrictions on checking the joint play in a closed kinematic chain activity, or during even squatting or stair climbing or walking, for example, in a treadmill, because that is what Mulligan proposed, that you should do the mobilization with movements or snags as part of the assessments. Okay, so there we are towards the end of the joint play techniques. Here information that is provided from a historical perspective to clinical indication and implications for treatment using the accessory mobilizations, okay, including the grades of mobilization of Kaltenborn, grades of mobilization of Maitland, and of course the joint play and the extended approaches, advanced approaches of differentiation based manual therapy, and also orthomyo-neuro manual therapy. Okay, so opening the session now for the questions. So go ahead, participants, put your queries and see what inputs we can have related to the accessory mobilization and joint play techniques assessments, especially in physical examination perspective. In a gross perspective, don't ask me in terms of disorders and the regional ones, because disorder ones, definitely mobilization Maitland concept detailed videos are there. You can purchase from the AOMPT and you can get the best practical information directly, clinical and patient-centered information. Okay. So waiting for the queries from the participants now. It's the good evenings. Yeah. Okay. Few okays and then a few good evenings. Okay. Some of you, if you are typing a big comment, it will take a longer time. I won't know that you are actually typing. So that's why I insist that first you put that one question, sir. Okay. So type 3 words, it takes hardly seconds to come online, so I can know that you are typing, okay, so that I can wait. Otherwise I will end the webinar and then afterwards I'll see that you have posted the question, okay. So remember that. We are seeing individually as webinars. Remember, joint play testing can come together with the selective tissue tension testing. So that means you can give the glide together with an active movement as Mulligan's mobilization with movement. You can give the glide together with the passive movement as Maitland's approach. You can give the glide together with the rested isometric contraction as either the functional neuromuscular stabilization or AM&MT, orthomyoneuromanual therapy, or even the differentiation approaches. Okay, so you can integrate everything as part of simultaneous picture. So that is how you actually shorten the time duration when you are in clinical practice. Okay, so that you have a focused examination and reassessment based treatment, and of course patient improves 50% on the day one. You are sure that spontaneous recovery and full recovery will be possible in maximum 3 sessions to 5. Okay, so that's important. Okay, more than 50% recovery on day one. Don't push the patient too much. Don't be over ambitious to create a magical recovery. The body's response could be adverse the next day. Okay, so give it 24 hours to recover. Body will always come back to normal when you are just showing the right direction of recovery. Okay, and all passive assessments or treatment should be complemented with active assessments, so that functionally you can relate that dysfunction, okay, to the symptoms. Okay, so I did not see any questions here, so we are ready to close the session now, and wish you all the very best. And I really appreciate some of the few members like Dr. Ritu, Dr. Paramita, Dr. Udaymala, who are joined in all the 3 webinars now, this Sunday actually especially. So I would keep you updated on the schedule. I might take more webinars as per my convenience and also with the internet connectivity speed. So I might inform just on that moment, okay, half an hour before. So it might be late in the night or it can be early morning. Okay, early morning the usual preferred timings are 6 to 7 or 7 to 8. Okay, so and the evening timings will be either of this, like 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 again. Okay, so either of these timings, just keep yourself ready. Don't keep asking me that today when is the webinar, okay, because I cannot foretell. I can only say just half an hour before. Okay, so remember that. As I was telling that during contraction you can give the glides. Contraction is muscle testing, so joint test play testing should be done with muscle testing. Okay, that's what is AM&MT is, ortho, myo, neuro. Okay, simultaneous testing. Okay, so good luck to you all. Enjoy the Sunday evening and stay cheerful, stay rocking, and stay protected. I'm not giving my opinion about the vaccine. Okay, so let's wait for the Prime Minister to get vaccinated. Okay, he's always the first. The President also should get vaccinated. After that, let's all see. Okay, whether to get vaccinated or not. Okay, so God bless you all.